Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. We are thrilled you are here listening today because we have a treat. Victor Antonio is here to talk about the power of focus. Welcome to the podcast, Victor. I can't believe it's taken this long to have you here. You have been around this business for a long time. Welcome to the show.
I think I've been around the business now 20 years. So yeah, and it took you this long to finally notice me. Thank you, Jane. Thank you.
I have been hearing your name from people all over the years, many, many times. And then the last time somebody said, "Oh yeah, he sent me to your book," or he told me, actually, I'm gonna get to this, that you told him what to do and how effective it was for him. But and then he told me to go and get your book. And when that happened, I was like, why have I not had Victor Antonio on the show already? Like, come on. So thank you for being patient with me.
We're here.
I
Let's make it happen.
appreciate it.
Let's go.
I appreciate it. Now, for those people who maybe don't know your story, tell everybody about how you got into speaking.
Okay, so here's the thumbnail sketch. By the way, I don't know if you know this, Jane, but I have a documentary called The Motivator, released in 2008. Free. It's free on YouTube. If you type in Victor Antonio, The Motivator, you can hear the full story. But here it is, the quick cut. So my family's originally from Puerto Rico. My mother had like a 5th grade education. Father had 3rd grade education. So they moved to Chicago. They were poor, food stamps, government cheese, powdered milk, the whole story. We lived near the Cabrini Green housing projects, if you know what I mean. My mother was like, learn the language, go to school, get the education, get the good job. So I have a background, my Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering, and I have an MBA. Started out in corporate America as an engineer, working for different like defense companies, telecommunication companies. Eventually went into sales. Why? Because I'm a capitalist. I like making money, offering value. So that's who I am. And so eventually one day I was president of sales and marketing for a $420 million company. And one day I called it quits, May 9th, 2001, 3:48 p.m. to be exact. I told my boss, I said, I'm out of here. I didn't want to do it anymore, Jane. I wanted to like do my thing, which is like be a speaker. And I've had dreams for being a speaker. When I first saw Zig Ziglar circa 1993, he came to Minneapolis, and I saw him. I'm like, one day I want to be that. But I didn't do it right away. So I joined Toastmasters and became very good at speaking. And believe it or not, I recommend Toastmasters to everybody. There's 2 things I tell people to do. Join Toastmasters, get through the 10 speeches, and read Jane's book. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. I said those 2 things: do not pass go, do not collect your $200 till you do that. And fast forward in 2001, so 93 to 2001, that was kind of trajectory. I kind of held that dream, so to speak. And then, I was doing well, Jane. I was making great money, in the company, but I just couldn't do it anymore. I said, I want to do the speaking thing. And I just jumped into it like an idiot. I jumped into it without knowing what the heck I was doing, which is where I found your book, by the way.
So you had a heck of a big job. Yeah. How many people were under your department?
So let me see. First of all, I was VP of international sales. So we actually lived in Argentina. I ran all of Latin America. We grew that business from 14 million to 98 million. And I had about maybe 60 people under my purview to grow that revenue. When I was president of sales and marketing, we had about, God, I don't remember the number, Jane. I'm guessing 40, 50 people under me. And we were running efficiently, because it was most of it was equipment. We just had to manage it. And so those were big jobs. I'm very proud of that background because
that's a good
a lot of speakers have not done the job, in this case, selling, and then became speakers. I've gone through it. I've carried the bag. I've been in the account executive position. I've been in the VP position and the CEO position. I know the slings and arrows that they take. And so when I moved into sales, it was very natural.
So for people who might be coming out of a big job into professional speaking, what do they need to understand? What's the, obviously you don't have the big team around you to say, do this, and get the job done. Like, talk about your early days. Was it you and one other person? Who was in your world?
You want the blood. You want the blood and guts, don't you? You want the blood and guts. You want the dirty. So I'm going to give it to you because it was like this. So I quit my job, right? Thinking jumping into speaking is like turning on a switch in a room, right? No. So I heartily recommend, do not do what I did. Do not follow my example, because I just burned the
Okay.
boats. And I mean, I should have thought about
Yes.
my burning boats quicker. So what happened was I
Yes.
quit. And then I realized, I said, you know what? If I had to go back and do it again, Jane, here's a tip I'd give to people who are in corporate America or have a job,
Okay.
is that I jumped into like motivational speaking right away because that was kind of the dream. What I should have done is I should have leveraged the contacts I had and jumped into more like sales, tech sales,
Yes.
because that's more of a natural kind of, a turnoff
Mhm.
instead of a radical jump over to motivational speaking. So if I had to go back and do it again, I would have just thought about it more. I would have built my content. Like I would have written my
Mhm.
first book before I jumped and really found what
Right.
my niche would be. Do that first. And then now you can then go back and market to these companies because as long as it's not a competitive, in other words, don't leave a training company and then turn around and start selling to their training people. But if you come
Right.
up a technology company, going back and selling sales training is not a big deal. And I should have done that. I should have had my ducks in line. One, I would have written a book. Two, I would have had a website at the time. Remember that? I would have
Yeah.
had all my marketing collaterals done. I would have had Toastmasters done. I would have done some practice speaking for free just
Mm.
to kind of polish my speech and my message. And
Yes.
then when I felt comfortable, I would have jumped.
Yeah. And that's actually what our recommendation, which I think in the Wealthy Speaker 3.0, it probably changed fairly radically from the early version. I
Mhm.
don't know what I recommended in the first version. It might have been burn the boats, but we really have a lot of students and private coaching clients who we recommend that they have keep their job until it's just crushing them.
Yeah. Yeah. It
and
is. Yeah.
and also until they have some income built up, because the stress of kind of
Point.
earning back that income can really do something on your mindset. Every month you're not making that big paycheck can really do a number on your mindset, and
Oh
i
my God,
i
Jay,
just think it's really
I want to
helpful.
emphasize that because man, when I saw our bank account just go down, 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 it's not a good feeling. It's not a
No.
good feeling. So your
Hey,
point, but I want
and
people
what
to know
about
this because
putting aside, hey,
oh,
Victor, what about the idea
mm,
of building up the marketing cushion? So let's say we have 20 or $30,000 just kind of set aside. And then when it's going down, 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 you're not freaking out because that is set aside specifically for that purpose. That might be, even $10,000. That might be enough to get you started. But
mm.
um,
You didn't
in,
put that
in,
in your
in
first book. You didn't put that
I
in your
did
first book.
not. Sorry.
Thanks for that. I don't need
I
that
know.
advice now. I needed it back then, Jane, not now.
I know better now. I
but
know
but
better
but
now, Victor.
I know I'm so yeah, I'm better, Victor. I've gotten better. But I really want to emphasize to people that and I said it to you before you got started, but I really want people to know this because this is not me just being here being nice to you. I've always known your name since I've read your book back in I think 2003, 2005, somewhere in there. And I read all the other books. I'm not putting all the other books down, but I think yours was, I don't think, I know yours was the only book that felt like a strategy book and not a motivational hoo-ha book. Like you can do it. You can have live
Mm,
no lifestyle, financial. You didn't do any of that. You're like, all right, here's what you need to do. And I was like, this is a blueprint. And so when I
yeah,
started utilizing that at the beginning, it just changed everything for me.
that's really interesting for you to note because we've actually, I think I've even gotten more uh somewhat motivational because of this mindset piece that we've added to the most recent one.
Mm,
I think that the mindset piece is absolutely essential. So that
love it.
brings me to a question that I didn't have on my list because this is
Mm.
where this conversation is going and I love it. What mindset shifts have you seen over the course of the time? So let's say year one, you're looking at the bank account, you're going,
Mm.
you're
Yeah.
having some thought that, yikes, this is
Holy sugar
scary.
honey iced tea,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Eh,
exactly. You're from Atlanta, that makes sense. And then let's talk about when did your mindset shift into gear that I've got it? You know
mm.
how an actor is always like, I'm always thinking about the next paycheck because I never know when this one's going to go away, type of thing. People get really nervous and scared and it's very easy to be afraid in the speaking industry. Talk about when you started to like feel comfortable.
There were two things that happened. The first one was I learned to speak with my authentic voice. Like I have a different presentation style when you see my long format shows. They're more entertainment, information, combination thereof, and I just use my own style. That to me was like the first thing I had to change. Once I did that, the response was different. But then the moment of all moments came. When you talk about mindset shift, here it is. I have a story for you, Jane. So I'm in Miami, and you're going to know the speaker, by the way. I'm in Miami, right? I'm struggling. Bank accounts just going down, right? And all of a sudden, I keep hearing about this guy named Randy Gage, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so Randy Gage, known in the network marketing business, just a guru in that space, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And so I said, let me go listen to this guy. Let me go pay my money, listen to this guy. And I told myself, Jane, I said, during lunch, I'll make sure I secure a spot next to this guy. So I'm watching him. So wherever he sits, I'm gonna sit right next to him. So I got it, sat right next to him. And then I start playing Randy, my violin, how things are not going right? Now, if you don't know Randy Gage, just look him up. And Randy is probably the most brutally honest individual I've ever met in the speaking business. No mercy, keep up, get dragged. And so I was telling him, hey, this and that and this is not working. I tried this, I tried that, I tried this. And then he just stops me cold, rudely, I might add. He said, Victor, let me ask you a question. I always tell people when someone says, let me ask you a question, it's not going to go your way, right? So he said, let me ask you a question. To which I said, what? He said, Victor, what business are you in? I go, that's not a question. The speaking business. He goes, no, like that, just nasty. No. What business are you in? Okay, the motivation business. No. Training business. No. Marketing business. No. I'm getting really mad here, Jane. My Chicago Puerto Rican side is coming out, right? It's like coming out, like I'm about to hit this guy, right? And finally I get irritated. I said, okay, well, since I don't know, you tell me what business I'm in, right? Here's what he says calmly. This changed everything. He said, you're in the marketing business first, everything else second. Now, when I heard that, my immediate reaction was like, screw you, Randy Gage. Screw you, Randy Gage. But when you hear a truth, and you go home and it just sits there like a hobgoblin in your mind and it eats away at you. And when he said that, I go, I get it. If nobody knows you exist, doesn't matter how good your speech is. I have a lot of people come up to me, Victor, I got this great message, great speech, which I say, I don't care, because I learned this from Randy Gates. I don't care. What business are you in? Marketing. And that's when I got on YouTube. And so today we have, I think, over 200,000 subs on YouTube, podcasts. I have blogs. Let me see what else. And so we got the YouTube channel, podcast, blogs. Those are the biggest ones. And I just started really pumping out videos. I was on a cadence of 3 to 5 videos a week, just to get my message out there, because I knew there were bigger speakers out there in the space of selling, and I needed to do more than them. So I just worked hard at that.
Yes. So, okay, you mentioned your Puerto Rican background.
Yes.
Is that ever a plus or a minus for you? Talk to me about that.
Oh, you're gonna love this story. So when I started in the college market speaking, right? I used to speak it. By the way, the college market is a great way to enter into the market. There's NACA and then there's APCA. Look at my thing, NACA.org, APCA.com. And so I used to market myself as a Hispanic speaker because my complete name is Victor Antonio Rivas Gonzalez. Most people know me as Victor Gonzalez, just the first and the last, right? Beginning caboose.
Okay.
And so I would market myself as Hispanic speaker Victor Gonzalez, right? Here's a problem, Jane, is that I would only get booked between September 15th and October 15th because that was considered Hispanic month. Don't ask me why they did 15 to 15. Don't ask me that question. And for the rest of the year, I'm struggling to get business. I had people actually tell me, says, wow, your English is really good. I was like, yeah, I was born here. It should be good, right? And so what was interesting, I'm not making this up. I've been introduced as Victor Gomez, Victor Hernandez, Hector Gonzalez, all common. Yes. I know. It's a jaw dropper. And the last time I was introduced, literally here in Atlanta, as Hector Rodriguez. And I remember I took the stage. I go, well, Hector Rodriguez couldn't make it, so Victor Gonzalez is here. And at that moment, I remember coming home and I told my wife, that's it. We're dropping the name Gonzalez. We're just going to use my middle name, Victor Antonio. And believe it or not, Jane, just by changing my name, the perception to the market changed. He
Yeah.
was no longer just a Hispanic speaker, because that's what they categorized me as when they see Gonzalez. It was like, he's a speaker. And my
So,
business just began to grow.
and really, you were 20 years ahead of time on that one, is really what it was. Because right now, I do believe that it's an advantage. And I believe that people are, starting to make sure that there is representation. Okay.
Yep.
So, but I'm wondering if along the same time period, when did you choose sales as your lane? Because when I look out and research you on YouTube, it's about one thing, baby. It is
Sales.
sales all the way down the
Yep.
tube. So good for you, number one, for picking a lane. And I don't think that motivation was ever a bad lane. I think you're right that sales would have been the smart starting point, and then you can kind of always expand into
Right.
motivation. I think that that's,
I
and
agree.
everything that you do as a speaker in today's world needs to have some sort of a motivational undertone, which you have. Talk about what made you say, okay, sales.
Right. So I'm in the college market, right? And I'm meeting all these wonderful motivational speakers, just giants. I mean, we're still friends 20 years later. I mean, just real badasses, right? But I realized that the motivational business is, as they say in the world of MBAers, has a low barrier to entry. That means
Mm,
anybody can jump into
anybody
being
can do it.
I
Yep.
stubbed my toe, they cut it off. I got a story. Let me share,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, anybody can be a motivational speaker. And I realized that's a commodity business. And it's a commodity business. Anybody can do it. You're never going to get good dollar amounts for it. So I started seeing that this is always like, you're fighting for market share or mind share out there in the market.
Mhm.
And again, I just looked at the market and goes, okay, let's just kind of work through this like a business person. It's what they call a red ocean strategy. Red ocean being there's so much
Yes.
competition, it's just bloodied water, right? For everybody's lowering their price. And that's what happened. Everybody was lowering their price. And I said, I need to go back to what I used to do for two reasons. One, I feel comfortable doing sales. Two, I felt like it was tangible value. Like when I teach
Hmm.
sales, I mean, it's tangible value. Like, oh, I got something I
Yes.
can use. And so in 2008, very specifically, 2008, I released the motivator and say, that was the exclamation point on my, I guess, category as a motivational speaker. I said,
Okay, I see.
we're done with that.
Okay.
2008, exclamation point, release the documentary. We're done with that. We're done with the college market. No more college market. I pivot to
Mm.
sales. And then I realized when I moved into sales, it was a different market. I chose sales because that's where I was. But here's what I did, Jay. It was around that time that Google bought YouTube. And it was
Hmm.
around that time that Gary Vaynerchuk released his book called Crush It or Crushing It, one of the two titles. And in there, he talked about video. Video's the future. Video's the future. And so those two things, my decision to say, by the way, I actually wrote a contract with myself. It's called the
Hmm.
sales influence contract, which is say from this point forward, we only talk about sales and behavioral economics as it pertains to sales. I actually signed it on April 1st at 12:03 a.m. 2008. I actually signed this one. I still have it. And I said from this point, so when people ask me, do you do teamwork, team building? No. Customer service? No, I don't talk about that. I only talk about this. And so all those things just coalesce to say, we just do sales.
That's so cool. I love that the day and the time that you
Mhm.
signed it. I can't, you asked me what year did you write the book? I don't even know. For years, I have a poor memory for things like that. Fresh, a sales influence contract is such a great idea. If someone wanted to take that and make their own contract with themselves,
Mhm.
what would be some of the things that you might put into that contract?
Well, I don't know what they would put in, but I'll tell you what I put in.
Yeah.
Right. So I found my battle flag. My battle flag, I read the book by Robert Cialdini years ago. It's been around 30 years now. I think the book called Influence. And I said, what if I take behavioral economics with sales? That's different. So I was looking for an angle, an edge into the market, right? So
Yes.
then I bought the domain Sales Influence. I had to pay a lot of money for it because it was taken. And I really pleaded with the guy. And I said, okay, so now my banner is sales influence. Like, I mean, just imagine going into battle, you got a flag. It says sales influence. That's all it says. So that's your battle flag, right? And I think if you're going to be a speaker, a successful speaker, you have to have a battle flag. What does the flag represent? And everybody has to look at the flag and go, I get it. I know who he is. I know who she is. Because
Mm,
that's the thing. Too often I talk to speakers. I talk about leadership. I talk about customer service. People don't hire generalists. That's the motivational market. People hire
Yeah.
specialists. Fix something for me. And so that's what I focused in on. So it said, we will no longer talk about anything else. We'll talk about sales and influence. And if I can't tie those two together, then we don't talk
Yeah.
about them. It was that specific, and everything in my verbiage and my content was based on that. Sales plus behavioral economics slammed together.
So you are really finding your authentic voice in this, and you're saying influence is the pathway to getting there, and more sales is the outcome. And when you get really, really clear on the outcome that you're providing, I could almost say you're in the marketing of that business.
Correct.
You're in the marketing of helping people make more sales through
Yes.
influence business. That's
Yeah. I mean,
interesting.
I have the pitch down where people says, well, why do you do what you do? Because I said, I help companies grow. I help them make money. And if they
Yeah.
make money, I should make money too. Quid pro quo this
Right.
for that. And I think that is,
Right.
by the way, I always tell people, I said, should you love what you talk about? And people always answer, yes. I go, that's not a requirement. And they go, what? I said, here's what's a requirement. It's great that you love what you talk about, but here's what you should love. You should love what it does for the end user, for the audience. Because if I love sales, great, Victor, thank you for being a narcissist and thinking about yourself. But if I say I love sales because it helps people make more money, grow their business, become more profitable, that to me is like, the emotional, I guess, staff under that banner that says, that's why I do it, to help companies grow. I love that. And I happen
Yeah.
to like sales too.
When you get really excited about the outcomes that you're providing, I mean, over here at
Yes.
Speaker School, we help people build the lifestyle and the business of their dreams. And seeing families get excited about. So, talk about I know you talked a little bit about the advice that you give to new speakers. And if you were going to go back and do things a little bit differently in the very, very early stages, what were some of the flash points that you had at times in your business where you saw a significant? So I'm assuming that picking the lane of sales was definitely a flashpoint. Getting
Mhm.
out of the education market, you got paid maybe lower fees there than you did in sales. What were some of the flashpoint moments in your business?
I think what I started thinking about, again, this is going to sound so basic. And people always ask me for like, Victor, how'd you do it? I'm like, okay, it's real simple. By the way, the strategy is simple. The execution is the issue, the tough part, right? Because I said, okay, so we're not going to do sales influence, just very consistent. And by the way, when you're focused, something else happens. You do less work. By that, I mean, you're not
Mm,
all over the place. Your
mm.
presentations get real sharp.
Oh,
The
I love
content you look
that.
for,
That's
it,
so cool.
yeah,
So
you
cool.
become just a little lazier in speaking. And I mean that in the positive sense, because once I knew I was all about sales and influence, I didn't look at anything else, Jane. I wasn't distracted. So then I said, okay, what do people want to know about? Right? That I know. So then I go online and look for what other people are posting as far as videos. And then I saw the videos with the most views. I would study the titles. Well, how do they do the
Right.
titles? What is the topic? So you and I can sit here, and I do this with companies. You and I can sit here, and I said, let's go over 52 things the customers want to know that they have questions about. And we can
Right.
list that out. And we list that out. And then I said, now let's create some videos around that and make sure the
That's a weekly.
content is fresh.
Yeah.
And so that was
Mm,
I mean, I had people say this to me, Jane, Victor, you're giving away your content for free. How could you do that? You're just giving away all this value. And I'm like, you don't understand the game. Now, I
yeah.
didn't want to explain it to him, but I go, you don't understand the game. It's not about trying to get people to pay for your information. That's great. I got an academy for that. But I'm thinking marketing. Randy Gage kicked my ass enough to say it's marketing. So I want
Mm.
videos everywhere. I want articles written about these videos. I want that type of diffusion through I'll say the YouTube sphere, because when I ask my customers, how did you find me? 9 out of 10, YouTube. And
Oh,
1 out of 10,
interesting.
podcasts. That's it. That's
Mm.
how I get my business. And here's the interesting, Jay. I barely spend anything on marketing today. in terms of like pay-per-click ads or stuff like that. I don't have to.
Yeah.
We have about 1,700 videos, 16 or 1,700 videos just on YouTube. And people are like, well, how do you get away? And here's the answer to the question. This may be going too deep, but you just tell me to pull back.
Mhm.
Here's my philosophy on giving away content. We've all had, like right now, you're at this beautiful cabin with a beautiful lake view, right? And somewhere in that house, I'm sure there's a puzzle. I'm sure there's a puzzle, right?
Yes.
And let's say you got a puzzle with 500 pieces, right? Now imagine that. How do we actually assemble the puzzle? We take the cover off, look at the picture, and then start assembling, right? Now imagine that if I sold you that same box, that puzzle box, but without the picture, the pieces are in there.
Right.
You
But
go,
you don't
I
know
don't
where
know how
you're
to assemble it.
going.
See, those are my 1,700 videos. They're pieces. You still have to call me to help you assemble it. And people didn't get that mindset. And I said, yeah, the content's out there, but they don't know how to assemble it. And so they would say, they go, well, okay, Victor, we talked about this, can you come in and help us put this together with our stuff, our process? And that was the magic combination. That's what they didn't see.
I love the visual on the puzzle that they still need you. And there was a gentleman that I worked for named Peter Legg in Vancouver, Canada, who I was his agent when I was first starting out. I represented several people. And Peter had a philosophy. He was a multimillionaire magazine magnate. And he had a philosophy: decisions based in fear are typically wrong. And when you don't give away your content for fear of them, well, what if they don't book me because I've put this video out on YouTube?
What if somebody copies my content?
Or that, what if? There's a lot of what ifs. Decisions based in fear are typically wrong. So I made a decision many, many moons ago. I have not trademarked The Wealthy Speaker. There's somebody else who does a podcast called The Wealthy Speaker. And okay.
Sure.
That you have these 1,700 videos. And so you're saying 9 out of 10 pieces of business comes from
YouTube.
the video comes from YouTube.
But it makes, if you think about it, I get hired a lot to do a lot of keynote speeches. They want visual proof that I can deliver from stage. And that's what I told myself. I can have the nicest, glossiest brochure, website, sizzle reel, whatever. They go, no, send me one of you actually speaking live. I want to see that. And I'm like, I got plenty of them, 1,600 plus online. You'll check them out.
Take a pic.
And I've had people like rip off my content, but I don't care, because what happens is I'm always creating new content. And that was the other thing. If I can tell new speakers this, your job is to create content. And just because you created the content today doesn't mean you hold on to that thing for the next 20 years and still spew the same content. You got to reinvent yourself every year, if not every other month, to come up with new content, new insight, something that makes people. I define insight as information beyond the obvious. Here's what I mean by that. When you can get a client to say, or a listener, audience member to go, never looked at it that way. Never thought about that. Really? You can do that? That's insight. It's information beyond the obvious. Too many speakers provide information. They don't provide insight, or the next level. There's information. I always say, then there's insight, like, didn't know that. But the third level, the magic level, is impact. Here's how it can change your life. Here's how I can help you increase your revenue, reduce your costs, expand your market share. And they'll go, I didn't think about it that way. You mean you can do that to get there? Yes. And they go, can you come in and speak to my team?
So good.
They have to get away from, like I said, I see so many. Jane, here's my complaint about the speaking industry. I'm going to say about 80% of the speakers I listen to, I could almost finish their story or their content. I can't. I even test myself. Okay, this person's going here, 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 and then they'll probably say something like this. And sure enough, they do. This is where I think the majority of speakers don't get any business, because they sound like everybody else. They're using everybody else's story. I saw a speaker not too long ago. So it's kind of embarrassing. So there was an author. The author has a story in his book. The author spoke about that story in the book. Unfortunately, for the next speaker, that person didn't listen or didn't know that the author was speaking before them. So she gets up there, she starts talking, and she says, well, my mother told me this story.
Oh,
And she
no.
tells the speaker's story that was before her. The audience, like me, is like, your mother couldn't have told you that because that boy just came up with that. You know what I mean? And it was so embarrassing, but that was a perfect example of using other people's content. When you show up for an event, the biggest fear a lot of new speakers have is that if there's 5 speakers up there, are they going to say what I'm going to say? Because I've seen that happen. Oh, I've seen that happen so many times where they just duplicate content. So I say to you, if you want to be a speaker, you got to come up with original content with your original twist, with your authentic self, and make people go, huh, never heard that like that. Like that. Nobody can duplicate that.
And I remember seeing, and I've written this down somewhere in the book, maybe. I remember seeing a celebrity speaker one time. So this is for celebrities. Kind of deliver like a book report of all of the motivational quotes they had ever learned.
I've seen that.
And I thought, oh my gosh, why wouldn't you? You just went through something that was really traumatic. Why wouldn't you tell me about that? Like, tell me about your personal story. Nobody can say that, nobody can mimic that. I think that is so fantastic. And,
Jane, I got to tell you the story only because I'm bursting with this story because it just happened like 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Speaker sends me his reel, his keynote, right? And he says, only 15 minutes, Victor, will you please listen to it? I'm like, oh, okay, right? Okay, right? Yeah. And so he sends it to me. And in that 15-minute speech, he mentions, let me see, I don't know, Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins. I said, so he goes, what's your feedback? I said, dude, you had 15 people with you on stage, but yourself.
They're the experts.
You kept bringing up everybody's content. And I said, everybody was on stage, but you. He says, you were missing. And that's exactly what happened with that person you're mentioning. It's like everybody else was there, but you. So I always say, kick everybody else off the stage and be you.
Yeah. So find your authentic voice.
Which is scary, by the way. It's scary, by the way.
Create content coming from that voice. I think figuring out a part of your brand is figuring out what you stand for as well, and finding out where your boundaries are going to be. And I think that the piece of advice to continually reinvent yourself under the same umbrella, because this topic today is about focus, and you've always come back to how this focus, you don't have 1,700 videos without focus. This is serious focus.
It's a lot of content.
And talk about, so we say here at the school that there are only 2 things that are required to become a successful speaker. Number 1 is that all-in mindset. You don't have to burn the boats. You can have a job at the same time as you're building this. But to be committed to the idea, being all in is number 1. And then number 2 is consistent action. And you are the poster person for this. I mean, this is it. So thank you so much for sharing. If people would like to connect with you, Victor, where would you suggest they go?
Jane, I am so famous now because of your book that if you just type in Victor Antonio, you'll find me. I'm all over. So whether it's on
maybe subscribe on YouTube. Maybe the subscribe on YouTube might be the best.
Even the
use
podcast.
of people's time.
By the way, the podcast
What's your podcast called?
Sales Influence. What else would it be called, Jay?
Sales Influence, of course it is.
By the way, it was just nominated for the top 15 consumer behavior podcasts.
Congratulations.
I was happy about that. And I just got, selected to be in the Selling Power magazine's top sales speakers for 2023. Look at that.
Oh, beautiful. Congratulations. So well deserved. I've looked back at your history and it has been, like I said, sales all the way down. Congratulations for that focus. And congratulations for your success. And I apologize that it took me a long time to get you here. I'm happy you're here. We're going to put links in the show notes to all of the places people can find you. Thank you so much, Victor, for your time today. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And with that, we'll say, see you soon, multi-speakers. Bye for now, everyone.